Welcome to the Chumash class that we have here at the Torch Center every Thursday morning at 9:30. Just a quick thought on this week's Parsha. In this week's Parsha, we see that we have last week we had the birth of Jacob and his twin brother Esau. And very interestingly, we see that there was another set of sisters of Leah and Rachel. And there was a prophecy known that the oldest of the children of Isaac, Esau, and the oldest of the daughters of Lavan were to get married, and the youngest were going to get married. And this was a known thing. Everybody knew about this, right? The oldest two of the boy and girl, and the youngest two were going to marry. And it's very interesting. It says about Leah that her looks were a little compromised. Why? Because she cried so much that her eyelids fell out. She didn't stop crying. It's an unbelievable thing. She didn't stop crying. What was she crying about? She's crying because she heard, or she understood, that she was supposed to marry the older brother, Esau, who was an evil, wicked man. And she did not want to. So what did she do? She dedicated her entire life to prayer and prayer and prayer and prayer. And then comes Jacob, falls in love with Rachel, starts working for 7 years to earn the hand of Rachel in marriage. And what does she do? She doesn't say, okay, you know what, I lost the fight. He's already working for 7 years, right? She continues to pray. She continues till 7 years after he starts working for Laban. He finally is granted the hand of Rachel in marriage. Laban gets this crazy idea. You know what? Younger daughter doesn't get married before the older daughter. He puts his whole thing together. And who ends up marrying Jacob first? Right? Leah. Do you understand the power of prayer? We're for 20 years or however many years from the time she got this news that she's supposed to marry Esau, she did not stop. Imagine how many times we have this in our lives. We're looking for a job. We're praying for our children to succeed. Whatever. And we're like, all hope is lost. That's it. I can't believe it. Like, the guy I was hoping to date and marry is now dating, a different friend of mine. It's all over. All hope is lost. Right? It's already, they're betrothed. Right? They're locked in. Jacob is locked in here with Rachel. She didn't give up hope. She says, I'm praying and I'm praying and I'm praying and I'm praying, and let God figure out the answers. It's an unbelievable power to prayer. Because the Talmud tells us there is no prayer that goes unanswered. There is no such thing as a prayer that goes unanswered. And people think, to pray, I need to be in a synagogue and I need to have a quorum of adults and pray with a prop. No. Prayer is opening my heart and talking to God. That's it. Wherever you are. Wherever you are, it says the Almighty is with you. Wherever you are, you're in your car, you're at the library, you're at the bank, you're by your computer, you need help with something, no problem. You don't have to dial anywhere, you don't have to call anywhere, you don't have to text anywhere. Open your heart. It says, Ezohi avodah shebalev, the Talmud tells us, you know what the service of the heart is? It's prayer. It's the service of the heart, that's what it is. Prayer, people think prayer is like, I have to learn the text. No, talk from your heart. Oh, I need to be someplace to pray. No, talk wherever you are. Right? Do you need help getting out of bed? You have a tough day ahead of you, like, just hit the snooze button. You know what? Put a prayer in. God, give me a successful day. There is no such thing as a prayer going unanswered. No such thing. The Talmud promises this. There's no such thing as a prayer that goes unanswered. It may take generations for it to come to fruition at times. It may be that God will say, you know what, the answer is no. But there's no such thing as a prayer that goes unanswered. It's an amazing thing to learn this from Leah. I've always seen this, but I've never really understood it like this. How she was relentless in her prayer. She didn't give up, right? It's like you look, I've had this a number of times where people were calling me. They said, Rabbi, we need an extra prayer. We want to try to get our kid into a certain school or a certain university, and they just locked up the spots that said there's no more hope. I said, how can you say there's no more hope? How can you say there's no more hope? Right? You don't think God can do something? I said, pray, talk to God. But there are no more spots. There are 40 students that they allow into the class, and there's 40 seats taken. Right? Pray. And then one kid decides, you know what? They got accepted to a different school also, and they move over to a different school, and that spot becomes vacant. Talk to God. You think he can't? He manages an entire universe, and he can't manage your school issue. He can't manage your job issue. He can't manage finding your spouse issue. He can fight. God is creator of heaven and earth. For crying out loud, he can do anything. All God wants is sometimes, and we see this with Rachel and Leah as well. We see this with Sarah. We see this with Rebecca, who were all barren. They were not able to have children. Right? They didn't have the tools that a woman needs to have a child. Physically, they weren't able to. And why did God do that? God said, because their prayer is so precious to me. I want them to pray. I want them to talk to me. It's like, you have a child, and they want the lollipop, but they say please so cutely. So you say, okay, say it again. Say it again, right? Why are you tormenting this child? Just give them the lollipop. No, say it one more time, right? That's what God's saying. God's saying, I'll give it to you. I just want to hear you one more time. Just say it one more time. Right? That's prayer. It's just talking to God, opening up our heart and asking. And the amazing miracles that follow is really, it's remarkable. So my dear friends, let's remember the power of prayer, the utilizing this power, and hopefully all of our prayers will be answered favorably, right? That our wishes hopefully are the same as God thinks and God knows is best for us. And we should always, always live a life where we understand and we see the hand of Hashem handling for us. Because there's many times that things happen and we're like, oh, look at that. It's like there's a story they say of this individual who was about to close a huge deal in Manhattan. He had to be at this meeting on time. He's about to sign a contract and he's going to close this major deal. So he says, God, please, God, I need to find a parking spot. It's New York City. It's impossible. He says, please. He says, if you find me a parking spot right now, I'm giving 10% to charity. 10%. God, please help me, right? He's circling the block and he says, God, 20%, please. Please, I'll give 20% to charity. I got to find a spot. And as he's saying that, a car pulls out. He says, God, forget it. I got it myself. Sometimes we don't realize that it's the hand of the Almighty that's working things. And we're like, oh, it just happened to be. No, God is talking to you. He's telling you, I'm right here. I'm taking care of you. And the more we open ourselves up to seeing that, the more we'll see it. If we hide ourselves, that's the way it works with the Almighty, is the more you open yourself up to that relationship, the more that relationship is there. The more we hide ourselves from that relationship, the more the relationship is hidden. As someone told me this week, he says, I just saw for the first time like the actual hand of God working. It's like usually the things happen, it happens in such a natural way that God hides himself in nature. So you're trying to close a deal and you're like, my competitor has got a better offer, and it's like, what do you think? God can't figure this out for you, right? So then there happens to be a reason that they pick you over the other ones. You're like, oh, I made a better presentation, right? No, God worked it so that it can, it's like, it's a very interesting thing that we see by Joseph. Joseph was punished. Does anybody remember why Joseph was punished? He had to stay 2 more years in prison. You know why? For 2 words that he said. When he was in prison, and you remember he had to reveal, he had to unsolve the dreams that the baker and the butler had, and he said to them, he said, when you go back to the king, he said 2 words: remember me. 2 words, 2 years more in prison. Why? You think it's this individual who's going to save you? You forgot for a moment that it was the Almighty who saves. Right? You put your faith in mankind. You're going to pay for it. 2 more years. It's interesting that in my girls' class that I teach in the morning, we were learning just this morning the book of Isaiah, how he warns time and again, every single chapter. He's warning the people, he's warning the Jewish people, because there's a tendency that people have that the more wealthy they become, the more they rebel. It's like almost like at the moment they become successful financially, boom, they rebel against God. Time and again. It's like, can't they finally understand once, for once and for all, that it's but it's because people get a certain confidence, people get a certain feeling of security, and they're like, what do you mean? I can buy my kid way into college, I can buy his SATs and his whatever other tests that they paid for in that recent scandal, you remember? Right? And they I can pay my way through anything, I can buy any politician, I can get any policy. People feel like they're all powerful, and they forget that there's an Almighty. They forget that there's a God, a creator of heaven and earth, who has just a little bit more power than them. Just a little, right? Right? And they forget it. They put themselves in the center of the universe, and everybody else has to serve them. And everybody else, me, I'm so haughty, and I'm so, because I can do everything. Look what my money can buy. And like that, it disappears. And what happens?
They have nothing.
They have nothing, right? And there's no more arrogance. And God does that constantly. You see, where the Jewish people were successful, they became arrogant, distanced themselves from God. Exile. Okay? Oh, God, how did we forget you? I'm so sorry, right? And the Jewish people repent, and then they become more successful again, and boom, again, they have to get... Our goal is to be at a point where we have that consciousness at all times, regardless of our success, regardless of our wealth, and we're living in a generation that there hasn't been a generation in the history of the world that is that has the abundance that we have today. Right? We're in the middle of the winter and we have avocados, right? Right? Like it used to be, it was a seasonal item. Today, there's no more seasons. You have everything always. You can buy I remember you used to get plums and peaches. You used to get them only in the summer. Right? Today, you go into any supermarket, you'll find them today in the middle of the winter. You know why? Because we have unbelievable abundance. And we also have a greater population of people today who say, oh, I think I'm just an atheist. How can you be an atheist in this generation? Where you see the hand of God everywhere. Hashem should bless us all, that we should have that openness. We should be able to see the hand of Hashem and connect to it and not let go of it. Amen. Thank you. Let's continue with the rest of our Chumash program, everyone.